Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Growth Path. Today I'm super excited to have somebody on that is has got a very interesting background actually, and we're gonna dig into that now in a bit. But I've got Tanya Ponton on today, who's the founder of 500 Words. Tanya provides premium ghostwriting for big brands, smart startups, and passionate entrepreneurs. She's also a technical writer, which includes copywriting and editing for B2C and B2B clients. On top of that, she also specializes in creative writing, which is super interesting as well. I want to dig into that a little bit. So, short stories, or novels, sorry, television dramas, 1 hour dramas, for example, and features as well. So, movies also. The part that I mentioned before is that she identifies herself as an ex lawyer in full recovery. So, that's also interesting. We're going to dig into that. And as we were just talking just before this as well, Tanya's now currently based in Houston, Texas, but prior to that, she lived in London and New York and practiced law there, I believe, as well. So we'll dig into that a little bit. But Tanya, nice to have you. Thanks for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
Sure. So, first of all, let's talk about your upbringing in the law world. Tell me a little bit about that and how the hell did you end up in marketing then?
Yeah, I kept trying to escape and I kept sort of failing, and then finally broke free. So yeah, I went straight into law after, in America we do 4 years of college and then 3 years of law school. So did all of that, went straight into a big firm in New York. Didn't love it, but it's one of those things like having a really rich boyfriend that you don't like. Like it's a great lifestyle to a point, but then you kind of get fatigued quickly. And then I moved to London, which I loved, but unfortunately it was still just sort of it was the same but better. I was doing, deals in Paris sometimes, which is nice if you don't want to do what you're doing and you're doing it till 4 in the morning. That's the place to do it. But I just never really liked it. And that's not unusual. I think a lot of lawyers, you find a lot of ex lawyers doing a lot of crazy stuff. You find ex lawyers everywhere. It's just one of those sort of career paths that it's great for critical thinking. It's great for learning to write really well, which I think, we can talk about how that serves me now. But it's a lifestyle choice and I opted out and I wanted to stay in London. And at the time, there were kind of more looser visa rules around things. I got a student visa and I had to study something and I studied for marketing and I couldn't tell you why. I was just like, maybe marketing. Like, that sounds fun. And then started a beauty brand, importing beauty products from the US and Canada into the UK and did that for a few years. And that was crazy. I don't know. I was in my 20s. Everything seems kind of like, yeah, I'll give it a shot. And I'm American. So, we just do stuff. And I was doing it in London. And I did that for 3 years, bringing in different candles, skincare lines, mostly UK, but also Ireland and France. Learned a ton about things that were pretty much the opposite of law, logistics and cash flow and inventory management and marketing. And did that for a while and had some success, particularly on the marketing side. Like getting everything to work at once and you've done none of it is a bit of a trick, but I had some success in the marketing side, found that interesting, got pulled back into law, went into law from life for a few years, and then came back to America and did basically HR for lawyers, which is a lot because these are people who read the fine print. So that was a big job, but it was a growth company. And what was interesting for me was, and I was listening to a podcast you were doing about these companies that are kind of, especially when it's an entrepreneur CEO and that kind of growth stage, that kind of 10 million to $50 million mark. And it was still law, but I was thinking the other side, and I was fascinated by kind of stage of growth and that evolution from that kind of startup, scrappy to strategy kind of migration. And that taught me a lot about how you do things and how you scale things in ways that I never would have known when I was trying to do everything myself. Did that for a long time. And then kind of in a midlife crisis was like, I'm going back to grad school for writing. And there's a longer story, but I had always loved writing. And I was just sort of like, I don't really think I want to do anything that's quite like this. So I'm going to stop pretending and just go full in. Was positive I wouldn't get in also. My bet was I won't get in, but I'll just scratch this itch. I'll apply. Tend to be intense. Instead of applying to one or two, I applied to like 15 programs. And I was like, well, I won't get in. I'll get over this. And then I got in. So that was an unexpected detour. So I did 3 years in grad school doing screenwriting and fiction. Fiction was my primary. Screenwriting was like my minor, basically. And then came out the other side and was like, okay, I'm going to write. I'm going to write for business. I'm going to write for the creative stuff is always the passion, but I learned enough, I guess, in these other paths, detours, that it kind of came together that I understood I could talk about capital markets, I could talk about beauty, I could talk about growth stage companies. I just, by that point had enough different sort of experiences, but then the technical ability to write about it. And that's kind of how I got here.
So like
So weird path.
you said something there about being like when you applied for stuff where you don't you did it quite intensely. You applied for 15 different things or whatever. I'm seeing that as like a trend across your life here that you're not doing things half-assed, right? So like
Why
have you never
bother? I'm kind of like all
like
in or I don't care. I need to get
yeah,
two different
yeah,
channels besides
yeah,
that, but
yeah.
it's kind of like I think my logic is if I try my hardest and I go full in, if I apply to 15 schools, it's probably just not meant to be, right? If I apply to 3, then it's like I'm not really sure. So I'll test it all the way and then I can kind of let go and move on. Like that's all I had and that wasn't good enough, that's fine. But if that wasn't all I had, then maybe it's me. Maybe I just didn't do it all the way. I don't know. I've been like this way since I'm in university level. I think I applied to like 18 colleges. I think I applied to 14 law school. Yeah, there's a trend. Yeah. There's a
I'd be
trend.
the same. I'd be the same. Just go big or go home,
Are
you
you?
know? Yeah, go big or go home. I drive people absolutely excuse my French, very nuts. I drive
No,
them
same.
absolutely nuts, you know? And they say, you're insane, Andy. You're insane. I'm like, no, but we need to keep going,
Yeah.
more.
Well, to me, what it is, it's like noise in the data. If I didn't do it fully, then I'm not sure. Was I not completely in? And so that's why it failed. So if I'm all the way in, then I can go back and be like, yep, that was it. This is just not my skill set. And then I just move, then I can let go. But I'm sure it's a control thing. I'm sure it's like, if I manage all the pieces. Yeah? No?
I don't know. I think it's an ambition thing, to be honest with you. Like,
Well, there's that.
that's I think people that are very ambitious are going to throw as much at things as they possibly can, you know. And I think it's also a caring thing as well. Like if you really care about it, you'll throw everything at it, you know.
Yeah,
I
that's
compare
true.
it a little bit to winning business, you know, being like having my own business now. I see it in that I give you an example. I won a piece of business recently and I spent a lot of time prepping for that piece of business. So I spent a lot of time putting together a deck, really thinking through what their targets could be, what a marketing plan could look like, what the visuals on that could look like, what would be the exact plays that we do. Like I spent hours putting this thing together because I knew it was going to be worth quite a bit of money for me. And I wasn't the only person involved in this process, right? There were other people that they were also speaking to about doing the same job. And they immediately, like I knew on that call, like I always, my wife laughs a little bit because I always say I had the meeting out of my hand, you know, like that's how I always, but I had people eating out of my hand, you know. And she's like, did you have the meeting out of your hand? I was like, yeah, I did, you know. But she was like, well, of course you did because you spent so much time and effort, like the care you put into it beforehand, people see that, and then that leads to success, right? And the
Right.
guys afterwards even said to me, "Oh yeah, we spoke with a couple of people, and they really like did. It looked like they didn't give a shit, you know, like in comparison to what you put together." I was like, "Yeah, but I was like doing this at like 4:30 in the morning, type of thing, like putting it together, and then like really
Yeah.
thinking through things and like going the extra mile because I was like, I have to do that because if I
100%.
don't do it, then I won't win it, you know." Now, there's
Right.
probably a happy medium in there, but still it leads to success. But I guess that's ambition as well, you know?
It's ambition, and I don't know about you, but I find it actually that I'm calmer. If I think a lot of people are like this, right? If I'm over prepared and I've tried everything, then like I said, I can let it go if I failed, right? If I've done everything I can and I feel I've actually gone 110%, that's all I have, right? So then it's kind of yes, it's ambition. There's absolutely just, I want to win, I'm competitive, I want to win the award, I want to win the work, I want to win. Like there's that. Yes. And I think that for me emotionally, it is just easier to do more and then feel less caught off guard. Maybe it's a little bit of a legal background. I mean, I wasn't a litigator, but you never want to ask a question you don't even know the answer to, right? So there's a little bit of that kind of like, I'm not going to go in there without being as prepared as I know how to be. I don't know what I don't know, but if I know it, I've got it locked out.
You and I are very
That's the
similar.
person.
Very, very similar. So I'd be saying if I go into a meeting with a CEO, I need to know what the numbers are. Like I
Oh,
need to
yeah.
know, and I like so much so that if I know that I even like have like a hallway conversation with a CEO coming up, I'm like checking the dashboards before I go make myself a cup of coffee. You
Yeah,
know, like
absolutely.
people look at me being like, "What are you talking about?" I'm like, if you get asked that question by like the
Right.
CEO of the organization, the one that you're, so the podcast that you're talking about, I guess you've seen it with OHAD, right?
That sounds right. Yeah.
Yeah, so Ohad was the CEO of a business that I worked for a number of years. And I used to go and make coffee beside his office because I knew as well that if I got close to the sea levels, then that would mean good things for me. But I used to like
Sure.
meticulously look at the numbers before I'd go up and make myself a cup of coffee. I went up floors, you know, to get a cup of coffee, you know? And people were like, "You're nuts." And I was like,
You're
You know,
strategic and you're ambitious, is what I would say.
exactly. Also nuts, but like in a good
But
way.
that's
Like
okay. But it's nuts. It's being channeled into something productive, and I'm all for that. I'm totally down for that every day.
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Now, if Ohad listens to this, Ohad, now you know, right? So now you know why I know the numbers. Ohad and I are good mates now, so it's funny. But hey, look, let's change lanes a little bit. Let's talk a bit about 500 words. So,
Mm.
how did you start it? What is it? Give us an overview of what you guys do, or is it just you, or is there more people involved? Like, what, give me 500 words in a nutshell.
So it is just me. It was actually, I did the one thing that I knew when I decided to start writing again. I've always been a strong writer. It's just, it happens to be the talent that I have, right? And so my college essays, when I got into college, several of the universities, I'm very old. We used to get pieces of paper in envelopes and boxes and then open and get the paper out that said yes or no. And I had
What's an
handwritten notes and a
envelope?
couple.
What's an envelope?
I know. Well, they had these things that kind of come in different sizes, and you shove this. It's ink. Do you know ink? Yeah, never mind. So, like, I had handwritten notes saying how great the essay was. So I started an essay coaching business basically, and 500 words used to be the limit for a lot of college essays. And I still think 500 words. I could go on for a long time. Let me come back to the short version. 500 words is a very useful amount of content to think about, especially whether you have writer's block or trying to make a quick point. We can get into long form and short form and the benefits of that. But I named it 500 words because it was kind of the college essay standard at the time. So I started with that and hired a marketing company because I understood that that was important. And social media at the time, social media marketing was really taking off. And that was just not my wheelhouse. I didn't enjoy it. I didn't really get it. I just didn't want to do it, but I valued it. I knew it was important for the brand, even though it was not my skill set. So it was the first thing I outsourced. And I started working with B Squared, Brooke Sellis, who was still Brooke Ballard at the time, and hired her to do, I think it was like Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram. And just like she knew how to target certain, and I was, of course, marketing to parents, but then the product or the service was for the teenagers, right? So I began on this idea of like speaking to two audiences at the same time. And even like the website had to, on the one hand, sound like something a 17-year-old would be willing to have this person sit and tell them how to write, but also authoritative enough that the adult who's paying for the service felt comfortable with what I was offering. So I was learning all these kind of like things about who my market was. And then Brooke was like, listen, the content on the website's really great. Would you ever do some copy for us for our website? And then I did a bit of that for her. And then she's like, actually, I have a client who needs some stuff done. Could you do a bit of that? And I was like, sure. And frankly, that became lucrative and actually something I was able to sell and package. It was less seasonal. I love parents, but parents in America, when their child's about to go to college, or parents at their most extreme parenting selves because the stakes are very high, I suddenly found business clients far easier. It's not the same emotional journey that a parent is at when you have their child's future sort of in your hands on the college essay side. So I also just found it a lot more emotionally easier, and all the moms are going to hate me. I'm just saying that that's a very specific time in the journey of that particular type of customer. And so this became something really interesting and a little bit different stakes that were not as personal as college essay. But honestly, for me also, it became something lucrative. It became a new skill set and something that I knew I could scale. That was, there's always going to be someone who needs writing. And we can talk about AI, but this was before that was even on the radar. So I didn't really have the kind of, I was luckily ignorant of that. It was so futuristic at the time. I didn't have any kind of concern of like, am I going to be out of business in 5 minutes when a chatbot can do what I'm doing? So that also made it easier to take some risk with kind of entry level writing that is probably harder to do now.
I think it is. Yeah, it is harder to do now, but I still think. Look, I'm seeing content agencies go out of business left, right, and center at the minute, which is really unfortunate, right?
Yeah,
Like it is very like it's. I think it's short sighted by businesses because they're leaning a lot on AI and think AI can solve all the problems.
yeah,
I don't believe that's the case. I think AI can help speed up things, but I don't think AI is the right thing to just start creating all of your content for you.
I
It's
agree.
somebody looking at a spreadsheet being like, OpenAI can just write all our blog posts for us. I'm like, that's not a good strategy.
Yeah.
You know, it's first of all because from a Google don't want that.
Well, that,
Although, like, yeah, there's that's one point, but it's a relatively big one as well. Use it as informing. that's not bad, but also the AI also lies a little bit sometimes as well. So be careful with that.
Well,
But
yeah. Well, sorry, I
go
was gonna
ahead.
say, and with the AI, look, I use it a lot, but I don't use it, I think, the way that when people hear I'm a writer and that I use Chat GPT a lot, that it's what you think I'm doing. I often, for example, will use it for pricing. I'll ask it a lot about, I've got this kind of project, I can write at this level, I'm doing this many revisions, this many consulting hours, and I'll talk to it a lot about how to price things. Or if I'm thinking about scaling something, or I'm working on a digital product right now and a coaching course for other copywriters. For that kind of data entry where I'm telling it, this is how long it takes me to do something, and this takes me to revise something, and this is what I want to be kind of my Q3 revenue target, fantastic. But I'm giving it tons of information to work with and then just having it synthesize the data that's got nothing to do with the creative copy. And when I do test on the creative side, what I usually do, this is going to sound a bit arrogant, but I think it's true. I will write something and then put it in and ask it, and not just ask it like, is there anything you can do better? Is the tone right? Is it taking too long to get to? I'm asking very specific professional writer questions, and my thing about when you just dump something in and you're not a very good writer, you don't know if what you got back is good or not, right? I can look and say, oh yeah, that's pretty good. That's tighter. I like the way that's flowing. But if you're a poor writer and then you depend on a tool to give you a piece of product that you can't assess, then you're using the AI too soon in your creative process, right? Like for me, it's kind of I have this specific question for this platform. This is website content for this kind of client. And this is what I'm trying to get their, ideal customer profile to see from this. That's a very specific AI question, as opposed to, can you write me 10 blogs to put up by 3 this afternoon?
100%. I actually spoke with, I don't know if you know Pam Didner. Do you know Pam?
Mm-mm.
So I spoke with Pam about the same thing on this podcast last week, where it's all about the prompt, and how much
Absolutely.
information you can feed into that prompt. So I believe the people that are doing the short sightedness stuff, as you mentioned there, is like, let's just have the AI write all our blogs for us and be like, hey, we need a blog, write it, about topic
Right.
XYZ, which is, it's not, it's shit content. I'm sorry, but that's basically the best way to put
Well,
it.
and what's, yes, sorry. And what's ironic, what I was going to say, yes, it's shit content. And what's ironic is people want, I mean, authenticity, I think, is getting really overused now, that word, but they want to feel like there's a human behind it. Like all of what's going on right now with content creation and people like being YouTube and TikTok and show your face and tell me your personal story is the exact thing that AI can't do, right? The human experience, it's connecting you to your customer or your reader or your viewer is the exact thing that we're having like this inside baseball conversation where I can shorthand or make some joke about something and you will get it as another human. What's not said, and that subtext and sarcasm and all the stuff that humans have been doing on a primal level, it's like when AI does six fingers. It doesn't know that that's like actually a big deal for us when you show up with a sixth
Yeah.
finger, right?
That's a very
So,
fair point. It's also the same, like in a real world context, like as a consumer, let's say, of content generally, like not B2B content, whatever, but let's say as a B2C consumer, let's take comedians as an example. Like I've heard comedians talk about, okay, you can feed the AI a prompt saying, hey, write jokes in the style of comedian XYZ. And
right.
you'll get the jokes, and you can even get it said in their voice. You could even
Yeah.
get a whole stand-up comedy special done by AI now, by any comedian, but it wouldn't
Right.
be funny because it misses timing, it misses the small intricacies like that person has. It misses maybe some of the awkwardness that person has. It misses like some of the hand gestures, the
All of it.
non-verbal communication stuff. Like there's so many other variables around it that just like the AI, as you said, just doesn't get.
No.
Yeah.
This is going to be an extreme sort of example, but I read an article, it's probably not true, that sociopaths do not actually kill that many people. And the reason why is because all of these nonverbal cues that someone who's got like a fully functional EQ has, on a primal level, we withdraw. So it's very difficult for like someone who actually is unable to relate to another person on a fundamental, on like an actual like sociopath level, because there are so many nonverbal cues that make us feel like we're connecting to someone, and trust and all these other sort of emotional connections that make you say, I'm going to buy from that person, or I'm going to listen to what they're promoting, or their influence is so strong. A lot of it is human nonverbal cues. And while that's not perhaps the best example, I do think there is that disconnect that it may not be something you can see on the page. The information is there, right? ChatGPT can give you a blog that is grammatically correct and organized, but there is no warmth. There is no, I've put stuff in and it will strip out everything sarcastic. It's like the least fun date ever. And like all of like my little like, hints and jokes about everything, just it's like been stripped out. And this is why I just think that yes, it can be very useful, but only at the edges when you've already done all the hard work, I think. And when you've really taught it. And for most clients, the amount of time it would take for me to teach what they want, I could have written it 3 times. It's just not efficient, at least not yet in my experience.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair. That's fair. I'm just wary of time now as well, Tanya. So, look, it's been really
Sorry.
interesting speaking with you. No, absolutely, no, absolutely. It's been really interesting speaking with you. Just where can people find 500 words, and where can they find you?
But they can find me on LinkedIn. They can find me at 500words.com. It's five, the number, and then the words. Yeah. And just drop me an email there or, yeah, on LinkedIn. Just connect or follow me there as well.
Perfect. We'll make sure that all those details are shared in the description. And hey, look, I
Thank
could
you.
probably speak with you for another hour or so on all this stuff because it's been super interesting. But there you go.
No, it's been great.
Absolutely. Well, thank you for coming on, Tanya. Hopefully, we can get you on again, and we can dig more into things like screenwriting and stuff like that. I'm really interested in hearing more about as well. But yeah, unfortunately, we ran out of time today. But I really appreciate you coming on. Thank you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Yeah, no worries, guys. This has been another episode of Growth Path. Tune in again next week for more great content. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.